I think that they are getting their ducks in a row in a very rapid way. I think that President-elect Trump's ability as a CEO to make decisions and to work through a series of things will become more and more obvious. And I think over the next 2 or 3 weeks, we'll see that this is going to be a very effective transition, bringing together a lot of very talented people.
Former House Speaker Newt Gingrich calling in to the Fox News channel today as he was down to visit with the Trump transition team. You heard Newt say he expects a relatively smooth transition, all the press coverage recently notwithstanding. Let's continue our conversation now as we welcome back from Atlanta, Georgia, head of the Women Vote Trump PAC, Amy Kremer, and from Newsmax New York, our good friend who leans leftward, has some interesting thoughts, the noted radio and television commentator Ellis Henican. Now, Ellis, one of the names early on in this transition belonged to Steve Bannon. Before the break, you were offering some insights that they're perceptions, but you list them as facts. I took issue with that. We had to go to the break. Let me yield you some time here to go through what you want to go through, and then I'll have Amy respond. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, terrific. I mean, listen, we heard such great comments from President-elect Trump upon his election about his desire to unify the country and to send signals that he wanted to be everyone's president, including some of the groups that he trashed so viciously, let's just say it, so viciously during the campaign. And so I think a lot of folks were looking at the appointments, the very early appointments, for signals about how sincere he was about that. And among the very, very first appointments was this fellow Bannon, right, who has had just a horribly divisive recent history, running this Breitbart news site, which is really maybe the greatest flag of the so-called alt-right, the white supremacist, the misogynistic, racist kind of views. And listen, it's always hard to tell whether the boss holds every view that's uttered on the property that he runs, but we do have to take some responsibility for the perspective that we peddle to the viewers. And I got to tell you, JD, it really disappointed me when I saw Bannon in such a high position based on some of the horrible stuff that had been published in recent years on that Breitbart site.
All right, well, let's turn to Amy. Amy, it was said that the thing that really upsets the left is the fact that Mr. Bannon, apparently as a strategist, is quite effective. Mr. Trump won. Your take on the Bannon brouhaha?
Well, I think you just hit the nail on the head there. He did win, and he not only beat the Clinton machine, I guess he was in contact with President-elect Trump throughout. And so I'm sure that he, had some input there with him. This is what I'll say about Steve Bannon. I know Steve Bannon. He is a friend of mine. I've known him for a number of years. He is one of the nicest, most genuine, authentic people that I've ever met. And truly a caring person. When he filmed the movie Fire in the Heartland about the women and Sarah Palin and whatnot, he flew out to meet the Tea Party Express bus. He filmed all these women. Then we went up to Washington to watch the premiere of the Sarah Palin movie. My daughter was with me, who was probably 21, 22 at the time. He could not have been nicer. Anytime I've ever reached out to him and needed anything, he's always been there. And he's reached out to me a number of times. He wants smaller, limited government. That's what he wants. And where all this alt-right stuff is coming from, JD, I have to say, I'd never even heard that term up until probably 2 months ago or 3 months ago. I think, there's nothing wrong with being patriotic. We are all Americans. We love this country, and we want our government to work for us again. That's why Trump was elected, because the people are tired of Washington working for themselves. And I mean, it goes back to, where we're paying them and they're not doing their jobs, and we are their employers. It's really simple. Steve Bannon is not a racist. He doesn't have a mean bone in his body, but he is very intelligent. He was a naval officer. He went to Harvard. I mean, the guy is an upstanding citizen. And the thing is, they are going to find somebody to attack. I don't care who it is. And they're
and it's the MO, and to be fair about it, usually in transition, politicians, there are one or two people who kind of attract the scorn of whomever the political opponents may be. In this case, it's Brother Bannon. Probably next week it'll be somebody else. But here's the other difference, Ellis. Here we are discussing this. We may be a bit passionate in our viewpoints, but we're sitting here discussing it. What's giving some of us some pause, Ellis, is what we're seeing in the streets again in New York tonight. Over at Columbia, there are the protesters. And, you know, people have a First Amendment right, but what's very curious is what happened out in Portland, where the protest became a riot. And now there was a report done where a television station there in Portland took a look at the roster of those arrested in the wake of the riot. A majority of those, close to 70%, didn't even bother to vote. Now, what does that, if we're going to talk about the alt-right, what does this tell you about the violent left?
It's not hard to explain. Well, we have laws against violence, and if people commit violence, they should be arrested. I know that the Portland police are capable of doing that, as are the New York police. I don't know why they didn't vote. I wish they did. Some of them might not have the right to vote. They might not be registered to vote. They might be illegal aliens. You know, we got some of those in the country. I don't know. But this is no great crisis. I mean, people break the law, lock them up. I got no problem with that.
Well, good. On that point of consensus, Amy, let me turn to you about these protesters who became rioters. I guess the whole thing is, if they don't bother to vote, why take not only a voice of derision, why engage in violence in the first place? What does that tell us about the left?
You know, it's Generation Snowflake. They're not getting their way and they're having a meltdown. It's like a 3-year-old having a temper tantrum. For real, I cannot believe that this is going on around the country. And we had somebody shot here in Atlanta who said he was a Trump voter over the weekend and lost his life. This is out of control. We've all lost. What has this country come to when we are raising a generation of kids that cannot accept losing? They can't accept losing. This is a generation where you got to give them a trophy for participation. How about it's okay to
Amy, take a shower. It's really not that bad. I mean, most Americans are doing perfectly fine. There are a few people out there who do crazy stuff, and we have ways of dealing with it. It's really not a national crisis, I promise you.
But to Amy's point about the university campuses, the safe zones, the coloring books, the therapy animals, to have that on certain campuses.
So don't go to those colleges. If you don't like it, go to a different college. It's no big deal.
Now, apart from ideology, maybe this is demographic, but I'm just curious. Are you cool with that, Ellis? Would you have sought out coloring for therapy in a safe space if, say, you and I went to the same school and we had a friendly debate over a certain beverage?
As you might expect, JD, I'm not real good about colored inside the lines. So no, I don't think that would have been the college that I would have chosen. But you know what? That's the great thing about America. There are an awful lot of colleges, and if you don't like what they're doing in one, go ahead and go to another one. How about that?
Well, I think what is interesting is out in Iowa, state legislator, a Republican, has the Buck Up Buttercup bill to make sure that state-supported institutions in Iowa don't supply that with taxpayer money. So we've got that going. We would be remiss if we did not talk about another sign of pop culture and lurching leftward. Some NBA teams have decided now that they will cease staying in Trump brand hotels. That's the report of The Independent. We see the headline there. 3 NBA teams will stop staying at Trump hotels. Now, Amy, that's their right, obviously. Of course, Mark Cuban, who went ahead and got behind Hillary, his Dallas Mavs are not going to stay there. Is this political, or in the case of Mr. Cuban, Amy, is this just personal pique?
Well, I think it's probably a little bit of both. I mean, I think everybody has just gone off the edge with they're going to move to Canada. They're not going to stay in these hotels. They're not going to eat at his restaurant. I mean, it's absurd. You know what? America voted and Donald Trump won. We weren't acting this way when Barack Obama won 8 years ago. We had to suck it up, cupcake, and deal with it. So here we are again.
Oh, and boy, Donald did a good job of that, didn't you?
Now again, friendly. It's Buck Up
Did a real
Buttercup.
good job of that, didn't you?
Buck Up Buttercup. Now, but Ellis, very quick.
You guys,
Go ahead.
You guys sure accepted that one well, didn't you?
Well, listen, somebody.
Oh, man.
One other piece of news, very quickly here.
Man.
New York Mayor Bill de Blasio shows up amidst the Trump transition. He goes in and meets with the president-elect. Then the mayor steps out and has this to say in front of the cameras.
I reiterated to the president-elect that I would be open-minded as we continue substantive discussions, but I would also be vigilant. And I would be swift to react anytime an action is taken that will undermine the people of New York City. I also know that New Yorkers will stand together. We're going to stand up for the needs of working people. We're going to stand up for our immigrant brothers and sisters. We're going to stand up for anyone who, because of any policy, is excluded or affronted.
Yeah, that little thing called law is beside the point. Gang, I'm sorry. Time is running late. But to play de Blasio in his entirety, we heard it. I'll have to bring you back to react. We'll bring you back real soon. Ellis and Amy, thanks for your time. Up next, a possible cabinet pick.